I'm a bit casual today because it's quite hot. I live in Spain. I don't use iron or shave either, but I'm talking about something important and a serious conversation about legal matters, some legal advice, some advice I can give to other people. No doubt there's millions out there that could gain from it, but I'm sure that not many people listen to what I'm saying. I don't blame them. But a lot of people have listened to me and paid me to listen to me. I've been told to direct the directors, and I was a dictator. Whatever I said had to be listened to. There was no discussion. It was not a democracy. I had to insist that they just did everything I said. I tend to come from a background where even the owners of the company, they don't tell me what to do. They employ me to do a job and I do it, and I manage it, and I delegate, and I instruct, and I direct. And I have a personality that always tries to do the right thing. I've had years of experience doing the right thing, having 5 children, having grandchildren, and looking after families. So years where some of my experience comes into to do with giving advice and what I'm going to build up to legal situations. There's plenty of different things I've experienced, but I've experienced £4,000 a day almost in legal fees 30 odd years ago. And I've spoken to QCs, leading QCs, barristers, part-time recorders at the Old Bailey, accountants, solicitors, and I've been quite amazed at the lack of knowledge. Excuse me. So, if one is about to make a will, it's necessary to make a will. But not always. Sometimes it doesn't really make a difference. One can just say, if you're married, it's a bit different to a common law wife or your partner living with. Different countries have different rules and regulations. I think in Spain, if you're a common law wife, you're a bit stuffed. You haven't got the same rights. I think it applies to England as well. Not a lot you can get really from it. And that's why perhaps it's not going the same as it used to go with marriage, because people don't like the idea of sharing with their partner, which is quite sad because these marriages don't last too long, lots of them. I've never been like that. Some people think that. I got divorced, but I never once thought that's what is mine is mine. I've never thought that way, but sometimes circumstances makes it having to appear that way, and so lots of people don't have the facts. In fact, lots of friends I know and relatives, they don't know what's happening, and they like to think not perhaps the correct way of thinking. They want to think what they want to think, but if they know what I'm like, I'm very fair. When I sold my house some years ago, I haven't had anything out from the house. I haven't used any for myself. I couldn't even afford to buy batteries for my watch for 2 years. I couldn't afford to buy new trainers, although I was walking strange because my heel had worn out for about 2 years. I bought plenty for my family, for my children and ex-wife, and extended family and grandchildren, and birthday presents and Christmas presents, but for myself, nothing. So, it's about being responsible. There are some people that I know that have never been married. They've never had a partner. It depends what you call a partner. You can have girlfriends, you can see somebody a few times a week, but you can't really know what it's like unless you're living with the person all the time, not 1 or 2 days a week or 5 days a week. You need to live with that person every day. You also need to be generous enough and responsible enough to want to look after that person so that she doesn't have to go to work, and that she doesn't need to work and she just perhaps wants to go to work, she can stay at home and look after the children. Well, I was not in that position really, because I had no money, no qualifications. So first couple of years of married, my wife had to go work. No, a bit later on in life. She worked for 2 years full time and 6 years part time. after 40 years of marriage. And I had children at school for 28 years. And most of that time, because some people like to think, oh, well, I was unemployed at the time, so they love to think that. But the biggest part of my life was working, the biggest part of my life was being responsible, and the biggest part of my life was providing well for my children most of the time. Nobody gave me any inheritance, nobody advised me, nobody did anything that was going to help me whatsoever. I did it. A daughter once helped me to buy a house, because she sold her house. It was a choice, but it helped me. And my mother left me £3,000 inheritance, and I bought a telescope out of that, and I mean to keep putting a name on it, calling it Dorothy, or Mum. It's in the corner of the room right now. And I've had no help. When my ex-wife's parents died, they shed out. That's another story as well. That's to do with wills. You see some bad behaviour people when it comes to wills. Terrible behaviour. I should got about 15,000 for that. So that came in handy, but it wasn't really needed at the time. So I've done a good job. So I know what it's like to live with somebody. And for the first 25 years, I never had a single night together with my wife without children being together. I'd go on courses. I'd be on courses in different places. But I never spent a single night with my wife in 25 years without children being with us. Some people haven't even learned how to live with somebody. Some people haven't learned people have to leave home first. And you leave home and your experience goes to university. And then you go and get your first bed sit or your first flat or your first student house, and you develop, then you get married or you get a partner and you get a flat together or a house together, or then you buy your own house together. So all these steps in life we unlearn stuff. And if you do it without any help from anybody else, you've done it the hard way. You develop a better character. You've done it. Not handed to you. You've done it yourself. No pretending and say, oh, well, I didn't really get any help to go on a holiday around the world. I saved up my pocket money. That's absolute nonsense, it is. It's just hiding the privileged, elite, spoilt brats of some people. So I've gone off again at tangent. Now let's get back to the point about the legal situation. If somebody needs to make a will, they can start from as simple as this. They need to make a will, especially if they anticipate dying, if they've got cancer or a terminal illness, they need to put their house in order. And as you get older, we all do that. But it can happen when you're younger. It can happen if you're in business or your life is complicated with many assets, so you might be a multimillionaire. It's very, very good things to do will. And I used to sell life insurance and pensions, and I've been involved with it for a long time. So make sure that you do put your house in order before you're going to decide to not be alive. So it comes down to the person that's expecting death to do that. And sometimes it happens unexpectedly. So sometimes if it happens unexpectedly, if you're Catholic, you call in the priest and get the last rites. Best to do it before they die. Likewise with a will. It's quite clear that one should have their will sorted out before they die. That's common knowledge. Now, it comes to a point that if somebody doesn't have a will and they're facing imminent death within 24 hours, and that's the way they feel, and that's the way you would feel if you're in that situation, and you need to decide, is it something to mention to that person that has forgotten to do the responsible thing and do their own will, or do it themselves at that time? If they need to have a gentle nudge to remind them about the consequences of a situation. Now, of course, if it doesn't make any difference, it makes a difference. But if it's going to be a situation, let's see, I can give my son an example. If his son's worked hard all his life and nobody's helped him to achieve what he's got, and he managed to get himself a house, and everything he's ever worked for, he's put into this property. He then thinks of some way to make sure that his wife and his children will benefit in case anything happens to him. So he puts everything in his son's name. Now, if the son, but he wants to put his son's name with certain conditions, but the son hasn't got around to putting these conditions in a will, like for instance, making sure that the mother can stay with him if anything happens. If I die, the mother can go and stay. So, if the son dies, then the wife can go and stay in this house, and the other children can go and stay in the house. So it's kind of conditions attached to the help and leaving a house to somebody within a partnership, complicated situation. But to try and make it simple, it's vitally important that this is done. Now you can take another case. Just say somebody said, if you don't make a will out, somebody's going to shoot all your relatives. Well, you make a will out, won't you? No matter what. Well, you should do. So sometimes it's extremely important. Sometimes it doesn't make hardly any difference. But when it does make a difference, it's supposed to be sorted out. Now the last thing you want when this happens is that all the people around you, or like in my son's case, if his son was about to die, and his entire work and all his assets that's going to go to the rest of his family and his wife, if he dies, but now half of it be lost, and they'll be in destitution and a bad time. And if the person if his son is supposed to make a will out and he's not on the right frame of mind to understand it, if by any chance due to not being under stress because lots of people don't like to admit that they're under stress when they're having a bad time. But just say they're having such a bad time that they haven't thought properly, and they actually might not realise that when you're doing the right thing to remind them, they actually take offence and they get the wrong idea. And for some crazy idea, they think you're thinking about money. You're not thinking about money at all. Especially if my son was an old man, but only got a few years left to live. No, everything he's doing is just for his son, his other children, his wife, and make sure they're going to be okay. But the son is under pressure and doesn't know what he's doing. Because if he did, there'd be no objection, there'd be no upset, and there'd be a very understanding. But we can't always expect that. But something you must make sure that doesn't happen is that all the people around that obviously know that the son's only doing things, asking his son to do a will, is only done for the right reasons. But just say all around, friends, relatives, actually, instead of assisting the person that doesn't quite grasp the urgency of the matter, and is not seeing things in the correct light or the right logic, for whatever reason, which I don't blame the person if they're facing death, if they can't understand that, wouldn't it be sad if all around the other ones, who would know that my son was looking after the benefit of his son and his wife and his other children, wouldn't it be sad if people that respected his knowledge and advice for decades would all of a sudden think he's doing something wrong? I don't do things wrong. It's a rare thing for me to do, especially in something urgent and important. It's not what I do. I don't act as an accountant or solicitor when it comes to these matters. There's nobody can love their son more than I love my son, and know that my son could love his son more than him, because every dad feels the same way. But if people sadly told my son's son, my grandson, that it's okay to take offence, and that it was wrong for my son to think about his other children and his wife, and a little bit for himself. If they actually encourage that person to think wrongly and cause a rift between my son and my grandson, and cause great grief to both parties, extreme grief to both parties, and to let the grandson not be influenced, because that would be a wrong word to use, but some other word that indicates that my son hasn't been told what he's done wrong, but my grandson doesn't really like him, and more people tell more things and more gossip, and the grandson thinks that what he's hearing is true, but it doesn't give my son a chance to find out what it is he's been told, because there's so many malicious people around. This can happen to anybody in the world, in any country. It can happen. So, if it happened to my son, with his son, I feel so sad for him, and I feel angry about the people that caused him that grief, to him and to his son, for not actually behaving the way they should have behaved, which is what he expect. Then 9 times out of 100 times, they would behave properly. So with that, I can just say to people, it's probably best to make sure that your will is made out long before the event of at the last minute when it needs to be done, because you cannot count on the goodwill or the experience or the intelligence of all the people around that will land at telling that person that's facing death wrong things. 100% wrong. Do the will beforehand. Don't make a mistake. You might face the same thing. It's not going to happen lots of times. It would take quite an ignorant bunch of people, really, not ignorant, inexperienced, not knowing what it is to face that situation, and sometimes just saying, "Oh well, it sounds okay to say this, but it's actually not." And if one had to, all I can say is, "I'm glad I got my brain and I can see what's responsible and what's not," and not all people can see that. So it's not even a matter of opinion; it's a matter of fact. There's no grey area. There's only one way to go about it, and that's the way that my son would behave, my grandson. So fingers crossed. Never have to do that, really. That's some legal advice to people around the world. Nothing to do with my family. One can say that, but it's not. I'm seriously thinking other people do not land up being in that situation. They could be surprised at responses that they would never dream of getting from what they used to. Yeah, it's quite strange. It's not a good thing for people. So do it beforehand. Get that will done. Always get it done before somebody's about to face death. The easiest way. And they say, no, there's plenty of time. I'm not going to die tomorrow. So, well, you never know what's going to happen. Just do it. So my advice to everybody out there, go and get your will done now. Goodbye.